What's up everyone, it's Sprometheus, and today I'm coming at you with a video that is 3 long years in the making. And it's been about 3 years since I've got a Linea Mini, started posting about it, and I've just had a deluge, just an avalanche of questions coming at me about the Mini for that time frame. I've done posts here and there on my blog about the Linea Mini. I did a 1 year and a 2 year kind of review wrap-up type of thing, and this is going to be my 3-year wrap-up, and this is the first time I'm doing a video about it, and I figured I'd answer some of those questions that people have just been throwing at me on a pretty regular basis, so let's dive into that. These questions aren't like how to make the best espresso, or how to steam the silkiest milk, or even how to pour the best latte art. It's always, is the Linea Mini worth the money? Now, like I mentioned, I've had 3 long years to consider this question, to ponder it, and to think about, what the answer to that question is, and it's complicated. Like, your relationship status on Facebook. It's not a flat out yes or no, much like am I wearing pants right now, which, go ahead and drop your thoughts on that in the comments below, and we'll touch on that at the very end of the video. And I'm going to reveal answers to both that and if it's worth the money. But first, let's dive in to 3 topics that I think are kind of a review roundup of the Linea Mini, and I want to touch on the 3 most important things about that machine, and it's espresso, milk steaming, and maintenance. The fact is yes, you can get a less expensive espresso machine. I mean, they're out there. You can get something that'll create 9 bars. I mean, you can use a flare and create 9 bars with that, no problem. But the Linea Mini is almost $5,000. So what are you paying for with that $5,000? And the difference between the Linea Mini and maybe the Flare is a bad example, but other home espresso machines with internal pumps is the Linea Mini uses a commercial rotary vane pump inside of it. So that's a very unique aspect to the Linea Mini. It's basically a commercial component, same pump you'll find in a La Marzocco sitting in your cafe. So that's a big difference. And for that, you get smooth, consistent pulls, no up and down in pressure, no sputtering, no stopping that you will see on less expensive espresso machines. Espresso quality from there is kind of up to the user's skill set. An experienced barista on a Linea Mini is going to hammer out some great shots. An experienced barista on a less expensive machine is probably still going to do a pretty good job. But the skill set of the user makes a huge difference on the overall experience that you're going to have. If you know what you're doing, a Mini will make you endlessly happy on what it produces in terms of espresso. But if you're inexperienced, you could easily get frustrated, disappointed, and wasting time and money on shot after sour shot. But again, that's something that basically bridges the gap between the Mini and any other home machine knowledge. And that's kind of why I'm here. So let's skip down to steam. So similarly to the espresso example, yes, you can get a steam wand on machines that are far less expensive. That's true. I'm not going to argue that. Yet, having used just a ton of home machines, a ton of commercial machines, I will say, and some people are going to be not stoked on this, but the Mini walks all over any home machine I've used in terms of the steam pressure and just overall reliability of that steam wand. And it stands up to any commercial machine that I've stepped up to and steamed milk on. And that's pretty high honors for a machine that you can drop on your kitchen counter, in my opinion. The steam is strong and capable of creating any texture that your little heart desires. It's fast and furious, and for those who aren't used to the amount of power that's behind a commercial steam wand, you're gonna blow out some milk. There's a learning curve, and it's just what's gonna happen. In the end, you're gonna end up being able to steam milk twice as fast, which at home I guess doesn't matter. But again, if you're looking at a Linea Mini, you are probably on the side of a giant coffee nerd like myself, and you want to be able to pull shots and steam milk and not lose pressure, so that's another beauty of the Linea Mini and its dual boiler system. Finally, let's talk maintenance. My 3-year anniversary with the Mini is coming up, and over that time, I've spent far more on bags of coffee, milk, and new toys than I ever have on maintenance. It's a reliable machine. The Linea Classic that goes into your favorite cafes, that machine is a workhorse, and it's known for that. It's built to last, and that's just the great thing about a Linea, and that's part of what you're paying for. That's part of what that price is. Yes, it's a luxury item, and it should be seen that way. It's built to be repaired and loved, and can run for a decade plus. Other smaller machines, other home machines, just aren't built that way. They use lots of plastic, their parts aren't commercially viable, so that means they're not, you can't buy them and replace them. So for me, I do my service every 6 to 9 months, and what I do is just change the gasket, screen, basket, and clip. And those things cost maybe $150 on Amazon if you're looking for them, and the parts are readily available, and they're all the same parts that go into a commercial Linea, so they're not hard to find. So that's a huge bonus. When it comes to those smaller machines, those less expensive machines, they're harder to find those parts and find people who can work on them. If there's something big or wrong, that's an even harder feat. You may have to send it back to the manufacturer, and that means packing it up into a box and shipping it to who knows where. But in the end, owning a Linea Mini is like owning a car. So if your budget is so tight that having to replace a pump or some kind of major component is going to tip you over the edge, then maybe wait on it for a little bit. Just keep going out and getting your coffee somewhere. Now, let's talk about the question at hand. Is it worth the money? So right now, a Linea Mini in the US will cost you about $4,800, which is a pretty big expense. I mean, it's one of those major expenses that it's kind of hard to justify if you're talking to a family member or a friend and you're like, oh, I'm going to buy a $5,000 espresso machine. Drop it on my kitchen counter. How's that sound? It sounds crazy. And like I said before, owning a home espresso machine is a luxury, and this is a luxury item for sure. But it's no secret that the Linea Mini is expensive. And in terms of home espresso machines, it's definitely towards the top end of the scale, only getting beat out by the GS3, unless you buy a commercial machine for your home, which that's just on another level. But justifying the price is very difficult when you compare it side to side with other machines, because there are other dual boiler espresso machines you can get for less. You can get a machine that pulls decent shots for less. You can get a machine that steams milk for less. The biggest difference is kind of that unspoken quality when it comes to the product that comes out. So a Linea Mini creates cafe quality espresso. That's kind of like one of those things that only us coffee nerds are going to understand what that means. To most people, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just something that you throw on the side of an espresso box and call it a day. But this isn't the case. And the machine itself is built to last. Like I talked about in the maintenance portion, less expensive espresso machines just don't have a lot of commercial components. They're made of mostly plastic. The Linea Mini has commercial components, and the only pieces of plastic you can find on there are like external body panels and stuff. So, I mean, that's a huge deal. And that's part of why it's so expensive. But also it's made in Italy and shipped over on a plane or a boat or however they move them, bench tested in the factory here in Seattle, and then shipped to your house. Like, there's a process behind it. There's 90 years of machine experience behind it. So it's worth the money. It's worth the money. But, and it's a big but, and I cannot lie, it's a little more complicated than just saying yes, it's worth the money. Because here's the main issue I've experienced with some, not all, but some Linea Mini owners. I will preface this by saying us baristas, trained people in coffee, specialty professionals, or even, the realistic home enthusiast, I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to the person who thinks that it would be very cool to have a sexy home espresso machine sitting on your counter so you can make sick-ass drinks and drop it next to your, crappily made scrambled eggs and be like, look at this breakfast, this is Instagram worthy. It's those people that, are going to have an issue with this machine, because in the end, you need to understand that owning an espresso machine, specifically the Linea Mini, when you're paying $5,000 for something, the expectation that the quality of what's going to come out of there from day one, from the moment you drop it on the counter, for some people, is high. And that's just not going to happen. And we don't call it a craft just to make ourselves feel good, because it is a craft. It's like any other craft. It's like woodworking or pottery or ceramics, I guess. Sorry, Sam. It's important you understand that it's a hobby. It's not going to be easy. You're going to spend time and money and effort building up your ability to craft an espresso, to steam proper milk, to pour latte art. It's not like, okay, you get the best equipment and you're already king shit. The learning curve is steep, and myself and other educators do our best to push the craft coffee agenda forward. But in the end, only you can prevent bad coffee in your kitchen. And it's up to you to put in the time and the effort to make that a reality. It's not on the machine. It's not on La Marzocco. It's on you. So before I wrap this up, I want to talk about a few other questions I get pretty regularly, and I got them on an Instagram poll even recently when I was talking about making this video. So I want to go rapid fire answer these few questions because they're pretty common and I think they're worth answering. So let's dive into those real quick. The first question is, do I leave it on 24/7? And the answer to that is no. And the reason for that is because I don't have enough power in my old apartment. My kitchen only has about 20 amps, the Linea Mini pulls about 14, and my refrigerator, if it kicks on, the Linea Mini's heating up, it's game over. So I only use the Linea Mini when I need it. The La Marzocco does recommend you leave the machine on all the time. It's easier on some components, so if you have the amount of power to spare, then just leave it on. Otherwise, turn it off, no big deal, no problem. Next up, why the Linea Mini over the GS3? And this is a two-part answer. First part is, look at the Linea Mini. And then look at the GS3. The Mini is sexy. The GS3 just doesn't do it for me. So that's answer number one. Number two is simplicity. So having worked in the maintenance and repair side of espresso equipment in my very first job in coffee, I've found that the GS3s are just very complicated. There's lots of moving pieces, there's a lot more electronics, you have pressure profiling, you have auto volumetrics. Those are all things that can go wrong. Those are all things that if they do go wrong, it's expensive. And so just to kind of soften the blow of the cost, plus, like I said, it is more expensive than Linea, twice as expensive as a fact. So, I just felt like the Linea was better looking, less expensive, and easier to maintain. So that's why I went with the Mini. And last but not least, grinder pairing. And this is something that is very important. Almost as important as the espresso machine, to be honest with you, because grinder pairing is no joke. You need to make sure that your grinder is on par with that espresso machine. And honestly, I would spend more on the grinder to begin with than the espresso machine. That piece of the puzzle is a major component to whether your espresso is going to be good or not. So when I say that, you want to get a grinder that has over 100, if not endless amounts of adjustability, because espresso is a very finicky little beast and you don't want to have to stick within these random notches. That may take it from a 25-second extraction to a 35-second extraction with one notch. That's just no bueno, you don't want that. So make sure you spend the money on an espresso focused grinder. There are some that are less expensive than others. Personally, I use the La Marzocco Lux D, which is a rebranded Mazzer Mini. It's a little clumpy, but in general, it's not super fast, so you don't waste coffee. It's push to start, does a good job. Those things will run. They're kind of like the perfect add-on to a Linea because they are the workhorse of grinders. But I do use Malcones at work. They create pillowy deliciousness all the time until they don't. In the end, make sure you're buying an espresso-focused grinder if you're gonna buy a Linea Mini or any espresso machine for that matter. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button. Give me a subscribe if you're new around here. Follow me on Instagram at Sprometheus, the blog at Sprometheus.com. And as always, stay caffeinated, pony boy.